Thank you so much.
My pleasure. How long do I go for?
You can do it from where you are, Bill.
20, 30 minutes, however, whatever.
Okay, excellent. Thank everybody for tuning in and trying to be unique, absorb as much Torah as possible. Due to the circumstances, you can't have the regular Shabbos morning shiur, so you figured out how to maneuver and make it work, and it seems like there's even more people involved. Beautiful. Thank Rabbi Alt for hosting and for doing such a remarkable job. Okay, this week's Parashas talks about all sorts of interesting stuff. Shemitah, Shvius, sabbatical year, Yovel, Tzedakah, giving loans. But there's one pasuk, one verse that caught my attention. V'lo ish es amisai, which translates, according to Art School, do not cause pain, each man to his fellow. Don't cause pain. And the truth of the matter is, ish es amisai appears elsewhere already. And the Gemara, the Mishnah Baba Metzia, tells us that one of them is coming to tell us, I know as moment, you shouldn't cheat your friend, right? If it's a bag of potato chips that costs $1, don't sell it for $5. Could be if you let him know its true value and he still chooses to spend the money, might be different. The seller shouldn't cheat the buyer shouldn't cheat the seller. And this time, when it says, it's talking about verbal harassment, which means do not cause pain to your fellow friend. Now, a person might say, like, well, I didn't mean to cause pain, and he just took it the wrong way. So, says Rashi, that's why it says, fear Hashem, your God, because he really knows what's going on, what your true intent is, and you'll be held liable for verbal harassment, insults, jabs, slights, anything that causes someone else to be uncomfortable. Now, we all knew that it's not a nice thing to do, and it won't gain you friends, right? But what not all of us knew is that it's a deraisa, right? You know, you always hear, like in Parashas Shmini, the Torah says what you're not allowed to eat. Tazir Mitzvah is about lashon hara, gossip. Parashas Behar is about verbal harassment. I know asdavarm. And the Bali Musa say, just like you have to be careful what goes into your mouth, Parashas Shmini, Tazir Mitzvah, Behar, you have to be careful. Parashas Kadeshim has lots of bin adam l'chaver, interpersonal halachas. Person has to be careful what comes out of their mouth. I recently saw a story. I'm going to read it to you, and I was blown away by something which probably happens more than we think. Two girls got on a bus and started talking to each other. Did you hear that Sarah got engaged yesterday? No, I didn't know that. That's amazing that Sarah got engaged. But she's so sloppy and unorganized. How is she going to run a household? She's never on time. Also, she cooked for us once, and her food was terrible. Her new husband is going to starve. She spends money faster than she receives it. How will she get through the month? So it went on and on. Behind the two girls was another lady who suddenly spoke up. I'm so sorry to interrupt you girls, but I want to introduce myself. My son just got engaged to Sarah. Now that I know this information, I'll tell my son everything that you said about Sarah, and he must break off the engagement immediately. I'll also tell my friends how grateful I am to you girls for letting me know what Sarah is really like. The girls were shocked. They started to stutter and struggled to find the right words. No, they cried with trepidation. Please do not let your son break the engagement.
I've got it myself now. I'll call you back.
Are you able to mute everybody, Rabbi Alt, as the host? If you hit participants, the background static. Okay. She's so warm, friendly, and caring. We were just talking. We never meant any harm. Please don't break the engagement, they pleaded. However, the woman was adamant. Thank you. But based on what you said, I'll make every effort to break it up as soon as possible. The girl you described sounds like a terrible person. I will inform my son immediately. The girls were horrified and crushed. After a short silence, the lady turned around to the girls and said, I'm not the boy's mother, but imagine if I was. I know Estavarm, lashon hara, they're not exactly the same, but both of them can be extremely damaging. Communicating in a harsh or an acidic way can destroy or debilitate a person for life. But it's only words people say. We seem to have the following aphorism like ingrained, embedded in our psyche, in our heads. You know, sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never harm me. We've all heard that. But aside from being patently false, an injury is so much sooner forgotten than an insult. It's clearly not the Torah's way, as you will see. In today's society, using words to put down or hurt another person has been elevated to an art. Now, I'm not so familiar with these different television shows, but from what I understand, something called celebrity roasts. It's watched by millions of people. Whoever can come up with the sharpest insults is the hero, right? So, gossip magazines live up to their name. Ridicule and sarcasm that embarrass others is the meat and potatoes of comedians. They're not making fun of themselves, right? They're making fun of everybody else. Real comedy does not wound or damage another person's reputation, is rare to find. As an aside, it happens to be many of the best comedians out there are Jewish. As David Letterman once said, he made a joke and it fell flat. He goes, "It's not my fault. It's Yom Kippur, and all my Jewish writers are off. I tried my best." Either way, we all know that the media will carry any sensational story. If that's what sells, that's what the media is all about. The juicier, the better. Then if they have to put an apology afterwards, in fine print the next week on the back page, then they'll do what they have to do. In general, I'm sure you know that you can't believe much that you read. If you ever were present at a accident, whatever it might have been, an incident, and then you see it written up the next day, like any details that happen to be true, like a merely coincidence, they say even the date on the newspaper is not true because it was printed the day earlier. It's not us, They quote Thomas Jefferson. We're on a tangent right now. I didn't mean to do this, but they quote Thomas Jefferson as saying that someone who doesn't read newspapers is uninformed, and someone who reads newspapers is misinformed. Either way, we all know that it's very much not the Torah way. And in describing the creation of man in Parashas Bereshis, it says, "V'yibach ba'apav nishmas Chaim." And Hashem blew into his nostrils the soul of life. V'yihya adam nefesh chaya, and a man became a living soul. And the Targum Onkelos comments, "L'ruach mamalala." What does nefesh chaya mean? The man became a speaking spirit. The essence of a human being being able to talk, articulate, communicate is something which is distinguishes us from animals. Animals might have a way to signal or communicate, but to talk the way we do is something that's unique. And something that always blows me away is that with our faculty of speech, we have the ability to learn Torah, make brachas, do chesed, daven, and earn our olam haba. But more than that, a person can, through his words, answer something on himself. He could say, "I'm not going to derive any benefit from this," and then it comes forbidden for him. There's Isser Lav. What do you mean? All I did was say words. And the truth of the matter is, it's even deeper than that. A person can turn to a woman in front of two Adam and say, "Hari Amikudesh Asli, you are betrothed to me." And you know what happens? If she goes then and is mizana, is unfaithful, she gets killed. Hold on. Just because he said those words? The answer is yes. Our mouth has the power to create isurim, to ultimately result in capital punishment, so on and so forth. Shlomo Malach, the wisest of all people, famously wrote, "Moves v'chaim biyad halashon." Death and life are in the hands of the tongue. If we abuse our speech, we can do all sorts of things. We can insult the Rebbeinu Shalom, God. We can denigrate and embarrass others, be destructive to ourselves and to others. Our marvelous gift of speech needs to be guarded. The Gemara tells us, the Talmud in Erechim points out that most of our limbs are vertical. The tongue is resting. Again, alluding to this idea that maybe we shouldn't say everything on our mind. We should let it rest a little bit. We have two of many organs, 2 ears, 2 eyes, 2 legs. We only have 1 mouth again, symbolizing maybe a person should just say half of what comes to his mind. Beyond the tongue, there are 2 walls, there's teeth and there's lips. Again, excessive amount of caution is needed. We've all found ourselves in situations where we said things we're like, I never should have done that. Either I offended someone or I was disrespectful, or whatever it might be. And most people don't think before they talk. Some people think afterwards, some people don't. But at that point, it's too late. Now, the Medrash compares our speech to an arrow. A sword, if you're swinging it, you could stop it at any point, theoretically at least. An arrow, once you let it go, you pull the bow back, there's no taking it back. And it's irretrievable. We mentioned earlier, there's something called Einos Mammon. Then Isas Misa in this week's Parsha is Einos Devarim. So it's an Isser Deraisa. The Gemara over there in Baba Metzia tells us that it may be worse to offend someone than to steal their money, because at the end of the day, the money is not you. It's external. It's separate. Some people maybe live their life that their money is life, but at the end of the day, it's not you. When you throw that dagger at someone, you pierce the essence, the person themselves. Furthermore, when you take someone's money, you always can return it. While if you take a real thought-out insult at someone, so then there's no, and you can apologize, but you can never make it like it's back like it was before. Now, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychologist, and I can't tell you why some people just tend to walk around negative, critical. They sit down at the Shabbos Kiddush, and you kind of know you're in for a Shabbos Gadol drasha. They have something to say about anybody and everybody. Two things that come to mind, I think, is some people trying to be funny, get some attention, right? And so they fire these dingers. Now, you have to remember that the recipient probably doesn't think it's nearly as funny as the one who made the joke. They say a joke's only funny when both sides can laugh at it. Okay, but I think something that happens more often is that a person's unhappy with themselves. They feel unstable, and they jab and shoot at others, like a cannon, trigger happy, and to lift themselves up, right? If you're together with your friend and you want to outdo him, so you can push yourself and try to, that might be kosher. But to push your friend down or dig a hole and throw him in, that's, I think we all understand, not the right way to go about it. And you're left taller in the head if you don't want to, figure out how to progress on your own. If you knock everybody else, you're the only one left standing. So very often the source or the shirish as to why a person walks around critical and just knocking anybody and anything he can get his hands on is because they're just not so happy with their own life. And they're looking to figure out how to raise themselves without pushing themselves. So it goes without saying, and sometimes you hear this on the baseball field and with children, you're crazy. Are you good at anything? Right? Let me ask, how many times do you strike out this game? So do you think it's possible that it won't happen again? Or sometimes you hear these, I think I figured out what you'd be good at. You'd make a good goalpost, right? That's your position in the game. Or we'll take this guy if we get the next 2 picks also. I think that goes without saying. All that's nichlal included in Einos Devarim. Definitely not pleasant. And it's particularly common amongst children. But when I say children, it doesn't necessarily mean little people who are young in years. Sometimes I remember when I turned 35, I told my brother, I'm 35 now. And he tells me, yeah, some people are 35 and some people are 5 years old with 30 years experience. 30 years experience, Lav Dafka. I once saw this t-shirt which said, growing old involuntary, growing up voluntary, and I opt out, I have nothing to do with that. So when I say children, Lav Dafka, I mean children, but all these type of lines are included in Einos Devarim. And I opened the Shulchan Aruch because Einos Devarim actually appears next to Einos Mammon in Choshen Mishpat. I would just read the words, and you'll be surprised as to what's nichlal, what's included in the Isur, reminding someone of their past, whether they're Bali Tshuva, whether they used to fall or slip in a certain area, gloating over other people's misfortunes, right? If someone gets a toothache, you go, oh, you probably speak too much Lashon Hara, right? These people have the Kis to Gan Eden. They seem to have a pshat as to why everything and everybody is going through what they do. Asking a person a question that they don't know the answer to. You go to your math teacher and ask them a science question, right? Now, sometimes a Rebbe might do that to their student to drive home the point that you don't know everything yet, and in order to sharpen him. But on the simplest level, it's Paskin rule, it's brought, codified in Shulchan Aruch that you're not allowed to do that. Do you know that walking into a store, asking for the price of an item they have no intention of buying, you plan on getting it on the internet, is a problem called Einos Devarim. Now, the logic behind this, say the Rishonim, the early commentators, is that this person's in the store waiting for a customer. Finally, the door opens. He looks up, and then the person walks over to a specific item, right? So he perks up further, and he starts getting excited, adrenaline. Then the person comes over and asks the price, puts it back and leaves. So you have, now, you're allowed to go into the store, and you can, preface your question by I'm just browsing right now, or I'm just wondering, and that's probably enough. But all these things are listed in Einos Devarim, nicknames. Anything that makes other people uncomfortable is potentially part of this Isser de Oiraisa. The whole minig of singing down a chassan, often a chassan gets up there and says in the Rambam, and they start, Yasis, they interrupt him, was in order not to shleivayish someone who wasn't capable, someone who wasn't proficient, someone who wasn't able to share a devar ter. Now sometimes it backfires because the person doesn't prepare, because he doesn't think they're going to let him speak, then they let him speak, and then he gets stuck, caught off guard. And I've seen that happen. It says the Rambam, he really has nothing to say. And for whatever reason, the other was sleeping, or the rabbi over there said, let him talk, and it can work against you. There's this textile factory that was looking to hire some workers. So 2 people walked in and said, okay, if you don't mind hiring us, but we don't really have experience. If you can train us in, that would be appreciated, and we probably could get the job done. He said, okay. So he took the time out, trained them how to sew. After a week, the factory owner, went around checking on everybody's work, and he saw the person's stitches weren't even. One was too large, one was too small, to the right. And so he said, what's going on over here? This is not acceptable. So he goes, listen, I told you that I'm new, and it's going to take time till I learn the ropes, but I'm going to get there, and things will be picture perfect, and I need a little slack. Cut me some slack. And so the owner said, yeah, that's fair. I'll check on you next week. He goes to the second fellow, and the second fellow is just cutting up the material any random way and lighting it on fire. So he goes, what's going on? You're destroying expensive fabric. So he goes, well, I told you I'm not so experienced, so you have to. He goes, no. If your stitches are off a little bit, then perhaps I'll but if you're doing something completely destructive, so inkazadavar, you don't get that excuse doesn't fly. It has to be reasonable. Similarly, being careful with Einos Devarim, being careful with that speech is very difficult, because you sometimes will say something which you are unaware of the consequences. I remember once coming to someone and saying, Mazel Tov, and they were like, the engagement's off. I'm like, I'm sorry. Okay, there's no way I could have known, but at the end of the day, I caused someone else pain, and this happens from time to time. Okay, and especially if there's sore topics or a history that you don't know about. So I'm sure inevitably throughout the day, we cause other people pain. What are you going to do? But it's understandable, because we're only human beings. That we don't really know what the other person's thinking, what's going through their life and their past experiences, so on and so forth. But for a person to go and just sit there throwing daggers and dingers and insults to others, which some people do. Everybody does it on some level, or many people do it on some level. Some people seem to be addicted to that type of behavior. So there's no heter. You don't say, well, you lose that whole, well, I didn't know, even if that person's more sensitive. But what are you doing? You're cutting the fabric in just a wild, reckless way, and you don't get any benefit of the doubt. When I once heard a beautiful machshava from Rosh Yeshiva of Shmuel Kamenetsky, said, did you ever see, or could you imagine 2 billionaires who are arguing or fighting with each other? One of them says, I have $3 billion. The other one, not to be outdone, counters and says, I have $3 billion, $6. He goes, that's silliness, because when you have $3 billion, $6 is negligible. It's insignificant. Perhaps he could say I have 3.6, I have 3.2, but $3 billion, $6 is foolish. So said Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky that each one of us, we have working bodies, we're healthy. We probably can all stop for a minute and think of 20 people who have less than we do, right? There's so much to be appreciative for. Would you sell your iPhone $1 million? I wouldn't. So we're wealthy. We have 2 of them. We're billionaires. So you have a better voice. You're better in sports. You're more successful in business. Your kids. That's why you're taking it out. That's why you're condescending. You're looking down at the other person. That's why you're taking a jab. It's all a joke. You're just as foolish as those 2 billionaires, right? That are, I have $3 billion, I have $3 billion, $6, because we're Ivdei Hashem. We're part of Hashem's chosen nation. We have so much to be thankful for, and our value is so much more than we realize. And when you start jabbing, insulting, looking down on other people, you're just as foolish, just as silly as those wealthy people. Now, it's interesting that in marriage, this comes out to play probably even more important. Let me explain to you. It seems like the closer we get to someone, the more likely we are to speak hurtful to them, which is counterintuitive, right? I can't tell you what the psychology there is. Sometimes you'll hear someone talking to a spouse in a way that you can never imagine talking to someone else about. I wonder if it's like, my wife I can't fool, she knows me already. The other person I can still put on the front. I don't know where or what's going through their heads. But and a real thoughtful insult to a spouse, whether it's a husband to a wife or a wife to a husband, can be remembered for a lifetime. I once saw this demonstration in a Shalom Bayis class. He took a piece of wood and they knocked in a nail. Said, that's what it feels like when you insult your spouse. Then he went with the back of the hammer and took out the nail and said, that's what it's like when you apologize. But there's still a hole over there. Don't think it's picture perfect. The damage, on some level, once words are said, like we said, they can only be forgiven. They cannot really be forgotten. And so how does someone tell their spouse that supper is not their taste or not their preference is an art. It's not simple. And, it's going to take me time to get used to it, or one could get tired of anything, each to their own. But they say over about this grandchild who came to eat by the grandparents, and the grandmother served the soup, and she took one taste of it and said, this is horrible. So the grandmother says, shh, Zaidi likes it. So I make it for him. I'm civil. I don't, I'll put up with it because I know it's meaningful. So she goes to her grandfather and says, Zaidi, don't tell me you're eating this stuff for years. This is horrible. She's like, Bubby makes it. She probably likes it. So I'm putting up with it. When I heard the story, I said, two losers. And I said, you know what? But the British is probably smiling. Each one is being extra sensitive, extra caring, not to hurt their friend. A wife recently complained to me. It was last month of Shabbos, actually, in my house. She said, he's got the answer to everything, but the solution to nothing. Ouch. But says Chaim Vital, just I think we're running out of time over here, says Chaim Vital that a person is going to be judged after 120, not so much about with the chesed and how they acted or treated outsiders, but it's going to start with inside the house, siblings, parents, children. There's no heter v'nos devarim. It applies to men and women at all times, even to how you treat a child. A child's not a sack of potatoes. You can't do what you want. Okay, sometimes there's a tail, so you have to tell them or show them that what they're doing is wrong. Okay, there's an art to that, and that might be different today than it was, 30 years ago. Either way, a person will be judged, says Chaim Vital, on how they spoke behind closed doors in the house. And whenever you're not sure, can I say this, because it might be a sensitive or sore topic for that person? A good measuring stick is to turn the tables and say, if I was in that person's place, how would I feel? And very often, you'll get the answer quickly, and you will hold back. We're talking about a nos devarim, but you could just as well focus on the positive word power. We all know that a kind word can change one's entire day or even life. And Chazal tell us that you get rewarded for all the good which you indirectly cause with your mouth, or vice versa. Someone comes on time to shul, and they never come on time to shul. So you go by and give them a jab and say, couldn't sleep last night? The wife kicked you out of the house, or whatever line you come up with. And the person says to himself, maybe I won't do this again. And, that could be on your shoulders. Let's put that in the positive light, right? You encourage the person, you make them feel good, like $1 million. And then they say, let me do this again. And it lasts for many years, so you get to cash in on those brownie points. As they say, good words cost little, but are worth so much. Last year, someone sent me an email. It's my mother-in-law. She's a teacher. I don't know if this is famous or not, but I'll share it. One day, Thomas Edison came home and gave a paper to his mother. He told his mother that his teacher gave his paper to him and said, give it to your mother. His mother opened it and read the paper. After reading the paper, her eyes filled with tears. Thomas asked his mother about what was written in the paper. She read the whole letter in loud voice to her son. Quote, your son is a genius. The school is too small for him, and we don't have enough resources and good teachers to train him. Please teach him yourself. After many years, now Edison's mother died, and he has become one of the greatest inventors. One day, while Thomas was looking into old family things, he saw a folded paper in the corner of his desk drawer. He took it and opened it. He read the paper. This is what it said. Your son is mentally ill, and we won't let him come to school anymore, was written on the paper. It was the same paper which was given to him by his teacher in school to give to his mother. After reading that, Edison cried for hours and wrote in his diary, Thomas Edison was a mentally ill child that by a hero mother became the genius of the century. Hear what's going on over here? His mother put a twist on it. And that encouraged, we all know the power of a compliment, and that gives you the energy and the wherewithal to continue on. And our Gedolim, we still have 3 minutes, half an hour, which was the max, right? Our Gedolim, we think of our Torah sages as people that just study Torah all day and they were brilliant, and that's all true. But they were exceptionally sensitive in how they spoke to people. There's all sorts of stories. You think okay, they were the Bein Adam La'Makam, and they left the Bein Adam La'Chaver to someone else. That's very much not the case. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, he got on a bus, and a woman who was, let's just say, very not dressed properly, came on the bus and sat down right next to him. Not on the other side of the aisle, just right next to him. And Rav Shlomo Zalman stood up, pushed the button, and got off on the next stop. And the students who were behind him got off also. So one of the students asked him and said, the whole bus was empty. Why didn't you go to the front of the bus, the back of the bus? Why did you get off? So Rav Shlomo Zalman said, this girl, she didn't do it, with bad intent. And just her mother never taught her. This was her upbringing. If I go take another seat, she's going to get embarrassed. She's going to realize something was wrong. What right do I have to do that? I have another option. I'll wait 15 minutes for the next bus. This was, Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, and I can share you through one after another how our Gedolim. Final machshava. I once heard Rabbi Gruzovsky was once giving shiur, Chaim, and a Behar came in and said, did you hear Yankel came a chassan? He goes, Gavaldik. Thank you so much for sharing. I've been waiting so long for him to find this Basher. He should be blessed always to be the bearer of good news. Thank you again. And the boy left. 5 minutes later, someone else came in and says, Rabbi, did you hear Yankel came a chassan? I'll tell you what I would have done. I would have said, I know already, I'm middle of shiur, we'll talk later. Let me tell you what Chaim did. Chaim says, you're unbelievable. Thank you so much for sharing. I've been waiting so long for you to have a chassan. You should be blessed. 5 times. 5 different people came into the room. Chaim, unbelievable, I think. The Chavetz Chaim in his later years, he was on his second marriage. He was in his upper 50s, and he went outside after Yom Kippur and built a sukkah like he always built a sukkah. And his wife walks out and says, Rabbi Yisrael, maybe you wanted to build the sukkah not in this corner but the other corner, but he already finished the job. So I could see the average person saying, listen, you're new here. I've been building the sukkah for many years. If it doesn't work, we'll talk about it next year. Chavetz Chaim said nothing. He dismantled the whole sukkah and reconstructed another corner. That's pretty unbelievable. The Rebbe comes out a little while later and says, Rabbi Yisrael Meir, I think you were right. Do you mind putting it back over there? Chavetz Chaim didn't say a word. He dismantled the sukkah and reconstructed it over there. It's godless, which I tell you, it's a straight up godless. Sometimes we find ourselves in these situations with a spouse. You give them a shopping list, right? And the husband goes out there and buys everything else besides that one ingredient. And he found someone to schmooze with, and you're waiting. And I can make fun both ways, but we'll just leave it at that. In short, often we're challenged, so we find ourselves in situations where, and that's where kedusha comes in. And I once heard a beautiful machshava from Yisrael Rising, and he said that we know ish v'ishtoi, there's a shchina over there. So imagine you walk into the house and you see Rabbi Yashiv sitting at the table. You're about to complain, why are you buying diapers in Walgreens? You know that Walgreens is more expensive than Costco. You think money grows on trees, right? And you're about to open your mouth, you see Rabbi Yashiv there. So you say nothing, right? He says, it's a chaval that we don't have Rabbi Yashiv in all our houses. All we have is the shchina, He said, if it would work, I recommend we have these blow-up Rabbi Yashivs. We put it on like the dining room chair, and that's going to keep everybody behaving. Then it's well worthwhile. Let's remember, Isser deraisa to cause pain to someone else, verbal harassment. The underlying principle over here is to think before you talk and try to tap into positive word power. You won't be in violation to transgress any isurim. You'll probably win friends and sure, enhance your shalom bias and make the world a better place. Shkar for listening, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi Heinemann. Is beautiful. Shekayach. Have a wonderful Shabbos.
My pleasure. All the best to everybody.